Hello, my name is Athia Choudhury. I'm a Mellon Postdoctoral Fellow in Disability Studies, jointly appointed to the Department of American Studies and the Science, Technology, and Society program here at Brown. I am a writer and cultural theorist, and my current research focuses on the relationship between war and wellness. More specifically, I trace how what we understand as modern diet culture and wellness culture is actually a legacy of racial hygiene and reform projects central to US imperial expansion in the 20th century. I started this project asking, how did we learn to sense what health looks like? How did we learn to sense what health feels like? And when did we first learn to experience our bodies as a problem? Starting with these questions, I began to look at a range of familiar health and wellness foods and technologies that we interface with every day, such as the calorie, skimmed milk, and protein, to defamiliarize and contextualize how we come to understand them as something healthful. I turned to how 20th century nutritional scientists and public health practitioners conducted experiments in food and hygiene reform on Native, Asian, and migrant populations, which not only produced these health technologies for public use, but also worked to mediate racial difference during a time of shifting labor relations in the US. US military expansion in Asia and the Pacific relied on these very specific ideals of health and wellness as forms of biopolitical governance as a promise for democratic and global citizenship. For example, powdered and skim milk shows up in my project in really interesting ways. I asked this question of how did places like China and India, known for having high rates of lactose intolerance, become two of the largest dairy producers in the world? I trace this back to the mid 20th century when US dairy corporations were trying to repurpose agricultural waste from creaming processes for butter and cheese in the form of powdered and skimmed milk. Powdered and skim milk or fat-free milk are the same substance, only processed differently. And while powdered milk was offloaded into Asia and the Pacific in humanitarian aid packages from US military campaigns as a fast, bulking health food to combat starvation, skim milk was marketed in the US as a weight loss elixir for middle-class white women dieting in order to achieve romantic fulfillment. Oftentimes, when we talk about the impact of Western industrial food production on the global South, it's to focus on how the US introduced fatty processed foods into native food systems, therefore creating sick and fat populations. My work tries to unsettle this hyperfixation on the production of the unhealthy native body and instead thinks about how US health food industry, in alignment with state agriculture and military contracts, not only reshaped eating cultures across hemispheres, but created modern standards of health for the post-colonial nation to legitimize their capacity for sovereignty. So I turned to this rise in Western nutritional science and literacy in the 20th century to home economists and homemakers, scientists, public health experts, and agricultural and food corporations to see how they collaborated with the nation state to usher in a new relationship to the body and eating through the metaphor of the body as a machine in need of fuel. I argue that the shift in nutritional science literacy and its global dissemination as a sensory metric of health was a pivotal moment in which traditional colonial administrative projects that mediated racial difference through labor relations shifted into biological data collection and bodily surveillance. The piece that I'm currently working on for the Cogut seminar focuses on the rise of protein consumption in our contemporary society, teasing out this relationship between biohacking and optimizing the body with a longer durée of debates over the consumption of animal and plant protein as a marker of one's capacity for sovereignty over the nation state. And so what my study of these health and wellness foods and technology shows is that the way that we relate to food and eating is ultimately a relation to power. Though the science around these technologies has changed significantly over the course of the century as dietitians and health practitioners develop new studies and approaches to food and eating, the vernacular used to sense health in our contemporary moment remains deeply embedded in its early formation and continues to exact a costly toll on how we relate to our bodies. What I hope is that by tracing these messy elementary tracks, we open up a possibility of orienting ourselves to a relationship with food and eating that is honest, indulgent, and compassionate.